I was talking here earlier to a brother who was talking about the fact that we describe these issues a great deal. We talk about them and we analyze them, and we rarely get a chance to talk about solutions. Well, we've been working on solutions. We're going to talk about power not from the point of view of being victimized by it, but by developing it and using it against our enemies. At the last lecture I gave at the Slave Theater, where we were talking about global white supremacy, I initiated this theme on power by saying that we can explain the reasons Europeans victimize us in as many ways as we would like. We could talk about them as being ice people as against the sun people, and that explanation is valid. I have no problems with it. We can talk about them in terms of their protecting their more recessive genes against our more dominant genes. We can even get into a little psychoanalysis and deal with the myth of length of penises and penis envy and all the other things, and black balls and white balls and brown balls and black holes and white balls rolling into black holes and things of this nature. And all that's fine. That's a lot of fun. But no matter how you explain why or how the European got to the point of victimizing us, I think the essential issue is that the European victimizes us because he can, because he has the power to do so. And we are victimized because we haven't developed the power to prevent his doing so. So in a sense, no matter how we explain why he does what he does, at the end point, he does what he does because he can. And consequently then, I infer from this that we can end his victimization of us when we end his power to do so. And consequently, I want to bring into the domain of discussion in this community the subject matter of power. I want us, in addition to studying black history and culture, to study power, its accumulation, its use and application. We should talk about it every day and everywhere. And we should read about it, and we should develop the means of using it. We should come to understand the nature of how white power is organized. In the end, power does not flow from the genes of white folk. Does that not flow from their ice age? It flows from the nature of their organization and the way they have chosen to relate one to the others. And it flows from their intentionality as a people and their appropriate organization of themselves to realize their intentionality, one of which is, of course, the domination of African people. And that means then that we as African people must study the rules of organization. We must study the means of relating one to each other in such a way that we multiply our power. And we must study our enemy's organization such that we can probe that organization and destroy the power of the enemy. And we can do it.
The white man in America is like Pharaoh in Egypt. He, the modern Pharaoh, is trying to control the 22 million so-called American Negroes as Pharaoh did the Israelites in Egypt. The white man's control over the so-called Negroes makes them helpless in trying to follow Allah and his servant into the land they call their own, and where they can rule themselves and other nations are doing. Where they can rule themselves as other nations are doing. The so-called Negroes are deceived in thinking their future in America will be a great one. They should accept their own and try to do something for themselves as other nations are doing on land that they call their own. They have intelligence, but do not have the desire to do for themselves. Consequently, the white man of America is helping them to continue to have such foolish desires. He wants to keep the so-called Negroes looking up to the white American for what he wants. The so-called Negroes are disgracing themselves, lying at the feet of the white man and begging him to accept them as equals and sharing the wealth of America. It is against the very nature and disposition of the slave master to accept his once slave as his equal or to share equality with slave in his wealth. Therefore, the ignorant so-called Negro who has never gone to school is now showing himself to be wiser in his acceptance of Allah and his true religion of Islam than the learned of our people. The poor among our poor desire to be white through intermixing with the white man and sharing his wealth. They prove to be even more ignorant than the learned in their fascination with gaining the enemy's wealth and power and their desire to trust the white man's power and wealth instead of acquiring permanent houses and wealth that Allah has offered. This makes them look very ignorant in the eyes of the civilized world. Happy Monday, happy Monday, happy Monday. Welcome back to On the Shoulders of Giants. I am Joseph Ward, and I'm continuing my reading of Elijah Muhammad's message to the black man in America. And this is the chapter, Persecution of the Righteous. And it goes from pages 206 to 219, from pages 206 to 219. Short chapter, so this will be a short video. But persecution of the righteous. But as you can see, I started with the clip of Dr. Amos Wilson talking about power, because that's what we're getting into. The overall tone of this chapter is power, having power versus not having power. And what I'll be reading will be explanations of what happens to a group of people who don't have power and who are expecting, I guess, help, who is expecting help from their oppressors or from the people who enslaved them, and a group of powerless people demanding that their needs get met by the powerful. It doesn't really work out unless the powerless people are able to build power. And that's what Dr. Amos Wilson was getting at, being able to build power, collective power. Well, we know one of our greatest hurdles to becoming a powerful people is we don't trust each other. We've brought into the narratives. We've brought into the nonsense. We've brought into the lies. Too many of us really believe the lies that are told about each other from whether it's within the black community, whether it's from the left, from the right, from whoever. We believe the lies, and the lies help tear us apart. We argue and debate about any and everything. We act like we don't understand that it's okay to disagree and still be cool. We don't have to agree on everything. And if we don't agree on everything, that's fine. We can still be friends. We can still be cool, and we can still work together. We can still love each other. We can still show love. We can still respect each other. And that word respect is going to be a theme for this video. We don't respect each other. A lot of us don't respect ourselves, so we don't get respect from the outside. In order to get respect from the outside, you have to have respect coming from the inside. We have to respect ourselves. Respect helps to build unity. Unity helps to build power. When we have power, we can get things done. We can get what we need. We can get our needs met. Matter of fact, we can become self-sufficient. Powerful people are not dependent on another group of people. And powerful people don't have to beg to get their needs met. We often beg to get our needs met. Why? Because we don't, say it with me, everybody say it together, we don't have power. So let's get our minds right and let's wrap our minds around how do we as Black Americans build the power we need so we can get our needs met, because nobody's coming to save us. So picking back up on page 209, we seek truth and justice. America knows that under her flag, we have received nothing but hell, beatings and killings without due process of the law, day and night, not only in the past, but in the present. She wants to make some so-called Negroes believe that the religion of Islam can be thrown out the window if they turn hypocrites themselves and trying to make democracy work. This is done only to deceive the so-called American Negroes. But I say to everyone who reads this book that Islam is here among the Black people of America to stay as long as their life is in their bodies. The God of Islam is with me and will back me and others who are working hard to deliver people from such evil and merciless race of from a much evil and merciless race of devils. What glory and honor does a so-called Negro get under the stars and stripes? No honor, no glory, only hell. We have proof of this by their so-called courts of justice. There's no justice in you, and this America knows. She would like to hurt every one of you and make you like it. It pleases her to do you evil. So you see, Elijah Muhammad is, and this is explaining how America, how he sees America has treated us over the years, right? What he's explaining is what happens to powerless people. What he's explaining is people who are at the mercy of others. The laws. We don't control the laws. We don't control the police. We don't control any aspect of true protection. We don't control any aspect of true manufacturing. We don't control any aspect of true entertainment or anything that we're a part of. What's interesting is when we become a part of these various fields or various entities, organizations, structures, whatever, when we become a part of them, we excel within them. But what's interesting is when Black people, when we create our own stuff, and this is one thing we've been talking about, we got to really address it when we're talking about building power. Part of building power is owning things, right? So Black businesses, when we own Black businesses, in order to build the businesses and grow the businesses, a couple things have to happen. The business has to get support from the Black community. No matter what, the Black community has to support the business, but the business has to, you got to do your job. You got to show up. You got to do good business. You can't be doing Negro business. It can't be subpar. The business that the Black people provide can't be subpar. You can't just whatever. You can't just give us whatever type of service and treatment because we're all Black. No, that's not how we build power. That business won't thrive. It won't thrive. It's on a downward spiral and it's only going to last so long. And then therefore we've lost another Black business. We've lost more access to wealth for the community as a whole, for those people, their families. Access to wealth is gone. A greater access to wealth is gone because the business has fallen apart because the business wasn't taken care of. The service that the business provides has to be top-notch, and the customer base has to give top-notch customer support. Customers have to be there and the business have to be there. It's a relationship. We have to relearn how to relate with each other and see the bigger picture of group dynamics, of racial politics, and why we need to work together. That's what Elijah Muhammad is getting at. Well, that's what we will be getting at throughout this. That's what, well, let me restate that. That's what I'm saying in regards to what I read that Elijah Muhammad is saying. Now, peep this. The Monroe, Louisiana Southern courts, with their Southern judges of hatred, are thirsty to take their own law of justice, twist it up, and throw it back upon the shelf. And when they look, they see a poor, innocent so-called Negro begging for justice, and his grandparents and their great-grandparents, before as far back as 400 years ago, who received nothing but the spitting of anger and threats of murder from the judges throughout the courts of America, just to mention justice for a so-called Negro in the South is an insult to the judge, who is supposed to be the judge of right and wrong between the state and opposing the attorneys. He becomes a more vicious enemy against the poor so-called Negro than the prosecuting attorney when he sees a so-called Negro before him. The so-called Negroes do not have justice under the law, not only in the South, but anywhere in America. As I plainly stated in Washington, D.C. in 1959, in the Uline Arena before 10,000 people, everything has failed us as far as justice is concerned. The Justice Department in Washington, the churches, the priests, and the preachers all have failed the so-called Negroes, and the so-called Negroes have failed themselves as well. So, as he's laying out, he's saying the Justice Department is not for us, it's against us. America has always been against us. Justice has never truly been served in America for the black people in America. As they say, the so-called Negro. Justice has never been truly served. And why would justice be truly served for a group of people that the dominant society sees as less than? Justice will not be served. There's no justice. There's no equality. Those are things that we have to take. Those are things that we have to that we have to create by becoming powerful, by becoming united, by loving each other, by liking each other, by working together, by building together, by trusting each other. You know, justice is taken, it's demanded, it's something that comes with power, it's something that comes with respect. Nations of people who are respected by others, they get justice. Think about the individual instances of things that can happen to different races or groups of people in America who are backed by countries, who are backed by strong, powerful groups of people. You do anything, the slightest of things to them, and justice happens. Swift justice happens, especially to us. Ask Nick Cannon. Look at the Nick Cannon situation. Nick Cannon said something, or Nick Cannon had the interview with Professor Griff, and the people who controlled his money, who were in power over his money, didn't like it, and they took it away. For the slightest thing, justice, they gave the justice that they could for the slightest thing, because they are together, they're organized, they're codified. There go that word again, that code, they're codified. So, by the help of Allah and the blood of the original man, whose father is the originator, I, Elijah Muhammad, will fight for the cause to get our people justice in America. And by the help and power of Allah, the power that is in the universe, the power that is in the nation of Islam, and the power of every atom that is bound in the planet Earth and that is bound in other planets. What angers America is just the idea of her 400-year-old slave not wanting to go over to the paradise of freedom, justice, and equality under the crescent of the divine religion of Islam, where they will have sincere brotherhood and friends throughout the civilized world. So he believes that America is doing its best to keep the black man out of Islam, away from Islam. You know, which is also a metaphor for keeping black people away from uniting.